All right, perfect. So good morning and welcome to Study Skills 101. This is the seventh session in our Montgomery County Public School summer workshops. We've got one more session left on the digital SAT and PSAT strategies. Before today, we will be getting into the agenda in just a minute, talking about some basics of study skills. For those of you who know me, I will try to spare you all of the time of the introduction, but for those of you who may be just attending the session for the first time, I am Nacy Veach. I work for the Princeton Review and have done so for the past 8 years. We work in partnership with Montgomery County Schools to bring lots of different resources to our counselors as well as families as it pertains to college admissions, academics, as well as test prep. Like I said, I've worked for the Princeton Review for 8 years. I have about 20 years in combined education. I've worked with high schoolers, I've worked with elementary schoolers in a variety of settings, and I'm hoping that I bring some good information to you today. So let's go ahead and jump in. So today we're going to cover 3 main study skills topics. Now, before we start, I want to reiterate this. I put it in the reminder email. This is a 101 level type session. So this is most recommended for 9th and 10th graders or students who are just looking for some very basics of study skills. Now, I will provide you with some additional recordings and resources after the session, but do keep in mind that this is just the 101 level type session. So first thing that we're going to talk about today is what are study skills. So here we're going to discuss what you need to know about doing better in school and why you need specific study skills. The second thing we're going to talk about is how you can use those study skills in your classes as you go to prepare for exams. And then finally, we're going to go over the way that strong study skills will help you to improve your grades. Now, again, the goal here is that when you leave today, you're going to have a better understanding of overall study skills and how to best manage your time as we dive into a brand new and potentially successful school year. All right, so diving into our first portion today, what are study skills? Now, this is a tougher question to answer than many students or parents think. Often when students use our homework help service or they start some type of academic tutoring, they're expecting answers and results immediately. So, for example, if students are trying to get a better understanding of how to solve the Pythagorean theorem, okay, and they have a problem that they want to work on, while getting immediate help might answer the questions that they have for their current assignment, the reality here is that getting answers to questions is not what helps students succeed over time. Study skills are. And before we discuss how you can use study skills and improve your grades, let's get a better understanding of what this term means. All right, taking a step further, let's focus on what is a good student. All right, so I'm going to ask for some participation here. Tell me, what do you think college admissions officers are looking for to spot a good student? You can put it in the chat, but simply said, what makes us a strong student or a good student? I know some of you are probably typing, so I'll be patient and wait just a second. All right, let's see what we have. Participation. We have grades. A well-rounded student. Okay, good answer. Anyone else want to chime in before we move forward? What makes a good student? People who get good grades and are in lots of clubs. Okay, wonderful. So there are lots of correct answers, but let's take the most obvious answer. A straight A student is a good student. When you see a high school transcript, like all college application readers do, straight A's are going to stand out. Now, there are other ways to define a good student, though, which means that you don't necessarily need, I would say necessarily need straight A's to get even into the most selective colleges, but it's a hefty accomplishment to receive an A in every class for all of your 4 years of high school. Still, though, getting A's should still be the goal for everyone, right? Excuse me. Sorry, let me back up. I hit the button a little too soon. But the real question is that we should really be asking is, how do students get all A's? Does it mean that they're the smartest students? Does it mean that they are working the hardest? So I challenge you to evaluate your current academic abilities by asking yourself some simple questions. This way you can honestly reflect on your own ability to improve. So if I were to ask, can I get better grades? Or can I improve academically? Then you won't be reflecting on what you're actually doing or what you will be doing in school when the school year starts. So I want you to think about how you approach specific assignments and ask yourself questions like these. Can you learn more from the lectures that your teachers give you in class? Can you remember more of what you read in your textbooks? Can you reduce your testing anxiety before you take a stressful exam? Can you write stronger essays for your courses? And can you be better prepared for your tests in any subject? So for every single student, the answer to these questions is going to be the same. It doesn't matter what your best subject is. It doesn't matter what your best skills or your current grades are. The answer to all these questions for every single high school student on this call is always, yes, I can improve. Now, the goal here is to figure out how you're going to accomplish these goals. How are you going to reduce testing anxiety? How are you going to better be prepared to take exams? Now, this process, in other words, building some foundational study skills is going to be your ultimate key to success. Now, we all know that preparedness is the key to success when it comes to many facets of life. High school is not going to be any exception to this. So looking forward and knowing what lies ahead for you in your current classes is going to help to ensure your success. Now, I know that some of you may just now be getting your school schedules. You don't know exactly what you're going to be taking yet, and that it's currently summer still technically, but once the school year begins, you're going to know exactly what you're studying currently in each class. So in other words, and we're going to use this for the purpose of this example, let's say you're taking American Lit, US History, Chemistry, and an Algebra 2 class. Now, again, imagine you're taking these courses and you're well into your units of study. What this means is that you probably have kept up your reading on Uncle Tom's Cabin in Lit. You can probably explain the causes of the American Revolution from US history. You can describe the layout of the periodic table, and you know how to solve linear equations. This material is going to be in the front of your mind, and you may have already developed some study skills to help you learn these topics. But will the study skills that you're using now help you for what you're going to study next? Now, what if these are the next things that you study in your classes? You'll be reading an entirely different kind of book in literature. Okay, that's not the only change, as you can see from the screen. Do you need the same skills that you are using now to learn about the Constitutional Convention or covalent substances in chemistry? How about solving inequalities? The answer to this sometimes may be yes, but in general, no, you're probably going to need to utilize other skills as well when looking at further units of study in your classes. So the point here is to say you'll constantly be building on your skills through each class and each semester. You're going to be adding new study skills to the ones that you're currently using. So being able to add new skills will again require the right study habits. Now, building new habits is not something that just happens. It takes an average of 66 days to form a new habit. So starting at the beginning of the school year will best help to set you up for success as a student. Now, evaluate your habits as you study. The most effective study skills are the ones that are going to work for you as a student. Your natural habits are not necessarily going to always be the best ones. So try to take a step back, evaluate yourself honestly. Be honest about what is working for you and what is not working for you in your classes. Now, here are a few examples of how you might be able to achieve that. Ask yourself questions like this. Is the best time of day, is this the best time of day for you to study? Some folks like to study during breaks or lunchtime or in the early afternoon. Some of you might find that you're a better studier at night when the house is quiet and everyone's gone to bed. Next, is this enough time for you to write your essay? The last thing that you ever want to do is try to cram something in and rush at the end. And are the habits you are in now leading to your success? Can you evaluate even better after you get a grade? Did you get an A on it? Did you study this in a new way? If it works for you, make it a habit and see if it keeps bringing you success. So again, just to wrap this up, having the right study skills is really going to come down to having the right approach that may or may not work for everyone individually. So before you even begin studying, you need to approach it with the habits to help you study better. All right, next up, a huge topic of discussion and a habit that everyone needs to develop, and that is called time management. Now, we've all been in a situation where we have a homework assignment due, or maybe we're studying for a big test that's happening tomorrow. We just can't seem to focus, right? Distractions, the TV in the background, your mom and dad are talking, you're scrolling on your phone. There are lots of different things that can sidetrack you or distract you from achieving your goals. Trust me when I say you are absolutely not alone in this. This is a struggle that we all face every day in this modern day and age. But you would be surprised how much more you can learn and how much easier homework is if you find ways to manage your time more wisely. Okay, this might be a no-brainer, but you want to start as early as you possibly can on any assignment. The benefit to starting early is also having time to get help. You run into a roadblock, you don't want to be doing that the night before an exam. You want to make sure that you have ample time to get and use the resources that you have available. Secondly, you can also create deadlines for yourself. Set a deadline for an outline or for a rough draft, and this will help you to keep everything on track for your overall schedule. Now, keep in mind that even though you might have a deadline, which is the deadline that you have to turn it in, you can still set different deadlines for yourself to ensure that you're getting things done in a timely manner. And then finally, do your best. It is hard, I know, not to procrastinate. Most students do procrastinate, but when you find yourself procrastinating, find ways that work for you to help you get back to work. If that means taking your phone and plugging it up in a completely different room and shutting your bedroom door, so be it. Find things that will work for you. Now, time management is going to be a key habit. I cannot reinforce this enough. This is critical in helping you to develop your study skills. All right, I was just checking the chat and I don't see anything. So this is going to take us into the second topic of the day, which is using study skills. Now, we already know that developing your study habits is a necessity. And again, the natural instinct for any student, or really for any human, is to just jump right into your work. You have pages to read, you have problems to solve, maybe you have an essay that you need to write. You likely just want to get it done as soon as possible, but rushing through your work can also lead to making crucial mistakes. So I want to talk about utilizing the right study skills so that you can study more efficiently and spend less time on your homework. All right, for example, we're going to take an assigned reading. You have some reading that you need to do for a class. Let's say you're given 20 pages to read. Now, the strategy that most people would take here would be to read through those 20 pages in order. That's the way we read a novel. That's the way that most pieces of informational text are being read. But school readings, excuse me, notification, but school readings are not written to entertain you. They're written to provide you with information that you need for your classes and for your tests. So here's a reading strategy that you can use if you're reading from a textbook. All right, so first you're going to just start with a preview. Your reading will have chapter headings, it will have other obvious headings. You'll see bolded terms. You might see those breakout text boxes and potentially even review questions at the end. So you will want to look at all of those things first. You don't need to learn any of these terms or concepts just yet, but the first thing that you should do here is to know what pages that you're going to be reading and the information that the text is going to be teaching you. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to read the intro and the summary portions of a chapter. So let's say you read, it says in your math textbook, chapter 8, the quadratic formula. Well, the quadratic formula is going to be a method that will help you to solve quadratic equations. So there, you're going to know exactly what you're going to be learning. Next, and now it is time to read, but you're going to be reading it in a specific way. We encourage you to do what we call reading in chunks. Use what you found in your preview and stop at the new sections or after a certain number of keywords. Do not try to ingest all of the information that you're reading at the same time, because it will become overwhelming for you potentially. And then lastly, we encourage you to take notes on each individual chunk. So depending on the length of your reading, you may need to stop and take notes multiple times, and that's completely okay. But each time you do stop after reading a chunk, you want to make sure that, your notes are answering the questions to the things that you had spotted in your original preview. Because when you have an assigned reading, the goal is to figure out what's going to be on your exams. And that is essentially the number one purpose of why you're reading. All right. It's question time. So before I move forward, I want to ask a question to the group. I would love to see who can give me a good answer here. Here's my question. As a percentage, okay, I want you guys to give me a percentage. How much of what you read do you think is going to be on your exam? What percentage of what you read will actually be on your exam? I would love to see if anybody has a good answer for me. $70, $70, $80, $85, $90, $75. We have a lot of people saying that they think that 75% of what they read will be on their exam. All right, I'm about to wow you guys. Someone says 100%. 20% of the course content comprises the majority of your exam. We call this the 80-20 rule of studying. Now, I know this baffles students all the time. You spend all that time talking about so many different topics, but you're only actually going to see an average of 20% of it when you go to sit down and take a test. Sorry, clicked it, didn't work. There we go. Okay, when you break down that 20%, you can see that it contains major topics, key terms, and main themes. Now, those are what we call the big ideas of your course. Now, the 80% that's not on the exam are the details, the explanations, and the examples that will help to reinforce the big ideas that you're learning. So for example, if you are taking a test on, let's say, World War II, you need to know how the US entered the war and why. Those are important, critical details of what you're learning about. But likely you're probably not going to need to know the name of every ship that was attacked at Pearl Harbor. So when you study, and especially when you take notes, you should always keep that 80-20 rule of studying in mind. Make sure that you have the 20% of the topics that will most likely be on the exam included in your notes. Speaking of notes, let's talk about how to take notes. So when it comes to taking notes, you do have a few different options. Maybe you've learned some note-taking skills along the way through school, middle school or high school that have been extremely effective for you. And I would encourage you to utilize those note-taking skills that you have if they're working for you. But in case you're still struggling with note-taking, we're going to start our discussion with talking about writing an outline. Now, if you were told to quickly take down some notes, you would probably just start writing with a number 1, and you would write down the major chapter headings, and it would look something like this. And then you write down the name of the chapter or the major topic. And then as you go deeper through your outline, which you've probably already learned, you're supposed to indent to show relationships between topics. And then you write down subheadings and examples from the book or lecture. Okay, as you can see there. And you should summarize everything that you can on an outline in 1 to 2 sentences, just so that you have a very neat recap of the main topic for later review. You can even write down as many possible test questions that you encounter. Those can either be directly lifted from something that your teacher says, or it can be review questions that come from your book. But here's the thing about this. Once you've done that for multiple pages, your notes are all going to look pretty much the same. And so imagine having to go through multiple pages of outlines to find a summary that you need to review to study later. It can be very difficult to flip through everything. And this is why many students and teachers like color coding notes. Now you can make all your headings one color. The examples can be a different color. Your summaries can be a third color, and then all your possible test questions could be a 4th color. Now, this helps you to separate the information out into what you need for later. You can quickly navigate back through and find what you're looking for. And a tip here, you do not need to always switch pens when you're writing, because that can be time consuming. You can always just go back and simply highlight your outline at a later time if you want to. Now, this strategy can help you help your later studying immensely. You can read just the chapter headings, just the summaries, like I said before, by finding the color that you're looking for. And you have the option of just looking at only the possible test questions if you're trying to study. And this method can be especially helpful for students who are visual learners. But for some students, there is still the issue of having to flip through all your notes and find where things are located. So there are other options of note taking if this is not a good strategy for you. Now, what if you started your notes from, let's say, maybe a different place? We're going to switch gears and talk about the 2-column method. You can always rethink the structure of how you take your notes at any given time. But I want to show you the 2-column method of note taking. Now, you may have been taught this before, or you may have had a teacher show you what we call Cornell notes, which is a slightly more complex version of this. But the hallmark of the 2-column method is that it makes you create a review sheet as you're taking notes. And this is how it works. Divide your note paper into 2 columns. The left side is going to be much smaller than the right side, because you're going to need to write a lot more on the right-hand side. Now, as you take notes, the left-hand side should be reserved only for major topics, main ideas, key points, basic terms, big questions, or similarly high-level ideas. Do not put any explanations or any type of summaries on the left-hand side. That is going to be reserved for the right-hand side. Excuse me. Now you might look at a filled out 2-column note sheet and wonder exactly, how is this going to help me? How will this help with my review? Well, what happens if you cover up the right-hand side? Now you can go back and just look at the items on the left-hand side and test whether or not you know them. So if you stumble, then you can just flip back to the right-hand side and reveal the answers underneath with your detailed notes on the right side. But taking it a step further, the 2-column method might not be right for you, but I want you to understand there are many different ways to take notes. Reimagine how you take notes and make your notes do exactly what you need them to do. Consider how you've been taking notes, evaluate how you've been doing with them in the past. Okay, so questions to ask. Were your notes better when they were handwritten or when they were typed? Okay, either is fine, whatever works for you. Were they better when you wrote more words, or did you understand it better if you wrote drawings or if you made drawings or figures? Were your notes better with abbreviations, or did you have trouble understanding your abbreviations? Or were they better when you wrote out in fuller phrases? Were your notes more successful when you wrote in outlines, or you made what we call idea maps? And if you really want to know what notes were most successful, all effective notes have the same answer to one question. Did you retain the information, or did you forget the information from those notes? Okay, so as I just said, did I remember what I was studying after taking notes? I know it seems simple, but never assume that you remember what you've been studying. Fortunately, though, there is an easy way to test yourself to see if you remember. Can you explain it to someone else? Sit down and give a few-minute explanation to a classmate, a sibling, perhaps maybe your parent. The person you're explaining it to does not need to be an expert on the subject after you explain it. They don't even need to be able to remember it themselves. You, as a student, are just checking that you have the basic concepts and you understand the big ideas that you just learned. All right, going to do a quick check of the chat before we move into our last section. All right, I don't see any questions. So our third and final section for today is going to focus on improving your grades. Now, we've discussed this a bit before, but developing the right habits and having a broad base of study skills are obviously a good start for you. Of course, the real point, though, of having excellent study skills is for you to get better grades. So if you developed your habits and you know how to use study skills, then you are, of course, a step ahead of the game and you're well on your way to improving your grades. However, keep in mind that you also need to know the best way to deploy the skills as you're in your classes to maximize the improvement that you make in your grades. And of course, that's going to start with understanding one simple principle about all of your schoolwork. Every single school assignment is slightly different than any other school assignment. Okay, I don't want to be redundant. This may seem very simple, it may seem obvious, but your math assignments are going to be different from your history assignments. That's going to differ from your English, and then all of those are going to be different from your science assignments, right? You'll be doing different things in each one of your classes. You're going to be juggling a lot. Individual teachers also have their own expectations and approaches when it comes to assigning work, and each class is going to present different challenges for you. But to dig in just a little deeper than that, even the assignment that you might receive in class today is not necessarily going to be the assignment that you're going to get from the same exact teacher next week. You'll be learning about a different topic. Maybe your reading is going to be more challenging in the next chapter for you. And of course, each individual assignment is going to require a specific task from you. The first thing that you must do to improve your grades is to understand the task that you're being assigned. Your task on an assignment is going to vary, though, depending on the type of assignment that you've been given. I was just checking the chat there for a second. Okay, so if you read a book for a literature class and you're tasked with writing a short response, then that's going to require a specific set of skills from you. You're going to need to understand the reading. You're going to need to communicate your thoughts about that reading, to your teacher in maybe just a few sentences. But if you have a chapter quiz on the same exact reading, then you're going to have to tap into some different skills. You're going to need to recall details. You might need to recognize larger themes when they're presented to you. And a chapter quiz is going to be different than an online test where you're going to be given more time to find answers at home. So you'll need to demonstrate your knowledge like on a quiz, but likely in a different type format. Now, similarly, a research essay is going to require a different set of skills, of course, than a short reading response would. Even if it's on the same exact reading, you're going to have to delve much deeper and find evidence there to back up your points. Now, if you're assigned a group project rather than an essay, your task obviously is going to be much different as well. But most notably here, you're going to be working with other people. But you are going to have to demonstrate your knowledge by responding to different tasks that you're assigned within a group. And then lastly, an in-class final is going to take on a completely different approach from any of these other assignments. You can be tested on everything that you learned in a class, and your whole entire test will take place in one sitting on one single day. Now, all of this to say, you need effective study skills to do well on all of these assignments, but you won't use the same skills. You won't be doing the same tasks across every assignment in your classes. Okay, while every single school assignment is different, we're going to give you two broad general categories of assignments. Now, the first is going to be quizzes and tests. Now, from a quick pop quiz to a year-end final, any quiz or test that you take in class is going to require you to do some similar things. If you know that you need to study for a quiz or test, there are things to keep in mind as you prepare. First, quizzes and tests cover a wide range of material. Even a quiz that just covers 5 pages from a textbook could potentially ask you about anything that's mentioned on those 5 pages. Now, expand that same idea out to a chapter test or a course final. Always remember the 80-20 rule that we talked about of studying. Focus on the 20% of material that is most likely to be tested. Next, quizzes and tests are also taken at a specific time. Now, you will take that test at your class time, whether it's first thing in the morning, maybe right before lunch, or could even be at the end of the day. You'll need to be mentally prepared to take the test as much as you need to know the content that's going to be on that test. And then finally, on quizzes and tests, your questions will be chosen by your teacher. That's obvious, right? This can be frustrating because your teacher might ask about a topic that you struggle with, or that maybe you just don't like the topic. But to give yourself an added advantage, take a look at previous quizzes, previous tests, get a better sense of the types of questions that your teacher uses, and that will likely help you with future exams. Now, again, quizzes and tests require you to study in a specific way. And while you might benefit from cramming for a quiz or test at the end of the day, you have to be potentially ready for anything. You may have to answer a certain set of questions, and it may cover a wide range of material as well. Now, what we just discussed is going to take on a different approach to preparing for a writing assignment. Now, whether it's a short reading response or a long research essay, writing more than a few sentences from your homework is going to require you to do some different things. First, a writing assignment will require that you do a deep dive in on your subject matter. So even a paragraph in response to a few pages of reading is going to make you think more deeply than on a short quiz would. So for a multi-page essay, you'll also be engaging with the key aspects for your course subject, which means you'll fully understand that subject matter in order to write about it. Writing assignments must also be thoroughly reviewed. Every essay needs to be reviewed multiple times and checked for both clarity as well as grammar mistakes. And then finally, you're going to show your knowledge on a writing assignment. So whether you're given a prompt or you get to choose your own prompt, you're going to stake a claim and you're going to share your own perspective. Okay. You begin getting better grades by planning your work and building your study habits. So if you follow that up by using your time wisely and looking into what's next in each class, then you work on studying in the best way for you individually. And you'll be able to remember what you've learned and you'll know your task on each assignment. If you develop the right study skills as building blocks, you'll have improved homework, stronger essays, and you'll have higher test scores as well. Now, these don't happen because you find some magic formula, but because you've done the work that will allow you to improve in school. And what all this means for you is going to be better grades. So when you look to improving your grades, don't start with, I need to get better grades. Start with all the study skills that we've discussed today and some things that work well for you personally, and build upon those things in order to be most successful in school. Now, as we wrap up our session today, remember that you will keep developing your study skills throughout school. You're not going to learn everything there is to learn in a month or two, or even in a school year. There are concrete actions that you can take during class and on each assignment that will help you to develop these skills. Now, this isn't just true for high school. It also applies to college. It can even apply to grad school, and it's still going to apply to you in your eventual career. And then lastly, know that you may change the skills that you use for each assignment. If it's not working, do something different. Study skills are not something you learn once. They're a habit you form. You deploy them over and over throughout school. And when you know things will change, you can be prepared for everything and anything. Now, with the right habits, you can adapt your approach to new challenges much more easily. You'll encounter new challenges every single year with each new class and each new assignment that you take on. All right, before we do questions, just a couple of things. I am going to send you some follow-up resources just to continue this conversation on study skills. We have some other recordings from tutor.com, which is the other department of the Princeton Review, that I'll attach in an email for you as follow-up. And just another thing, as we get into the school year, we deliver books to our college and career centers for Montgomery County Schools. Here is one of the books that we have. I'll be delivering to many of your college and career centers. So if you're looking for something to help you study and take some pages out of the Princeton Review's book, it's called the Complete Homework Planner. Now, again, some of this information you can find online. I mean, if you want to purchase the book, I'm not here to sell the book, but I can tell you, you can find it on places like Amazon. But many of your college and career centers do have Princeton review books available for you. If you just go and inquire, you might be able to get your hands on some of those as well. The name of the book is The Complete Homework Planner. All right, it is time for questions. Yes, the first question that I just received is, will there be a recording of this? We actually are recording right now. I'm going to end this recording here in just a moment as we go through sessions or through questions, and that will be available to you as early as tomorrow. We just need to get it uploaded. We have an entire channel of all of our recordings from the summer, so you'll get the link to that as well. So if you have questions, general questions, pop them in the chat for me. We'll go through those. For now, I'll just be patient and let those come through. Okay, so I have a really interesting question that I just received. Thank you for your question. Can some of these study skills be applied to the SAT and ACT, or is that completely different? I would say that standardized testing strategies in general are very different from any of the strategies that you're going to deploy in school. However, using good time management and consistency are still going to be useful for you at the end of the day. So being prepared is always important. And managing your time is definitely important as well. You're not really going to take notes in the same way as you would for a class, since you're not going to be doing reading in the same way. So those strategies might be different, but yes, there is absolutely some overlap between standardized tests and what we discussed today. All right, I don't see anything coming through as far as questions. Oh, hold on a second. Oh, there was just a bye. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you all so much for joining today. If you have any additional questions, you can always reach out to me directly. My email address is on the screen.